So this video is a continuation from the previous video. You can see the ancient pyramids of Egypt here. And then you can see how I.M. Pei, who was another Pritzker Prize winning architect, used the shape and influence of the pyramid to build one in the middle of the plaza in the Louvre. And there's a whole lot of culture behind what he did, and there are people who love it, and there are people who hate it. And there's not a whole lot of in between. And so it's really interesting, and if you want to read up more on that, do a little bit more research on that, it's just really an interesting story. But here, this is yet another example of modern architect influenced by ancient architects. This is one of my favorite stories. I had to throw this in here. So that is the statue of the Buddha. Okay. Now, Marcel Duchamp in the 1970s, I'm trying to remember when he did this. I'm afraid I forgot. Okay, so all the way on the far right, you see a picture of a urinal that was laid down on the table, and it was presented in an art museum. And he called it the fountain because in his mind, in his idea, this was all this cultural revolution going on in America, was that, and it was going on around in other countries. His idea was that if you take an object and use it differently or turn it differently, will it still have the same function? And obviously not, right? For a lot of reasons. And so he rotated it, laid it down, called it the fountain, and put it in museums. And obviously, you can imagine, people loved it, people hated it. And now most people ignore it because this is nowhere near as controversial as other forms of art. And we will get to that later on. We will talk about controversial stuff. And then Sherry Levine was inspired by that because she saw, and you can almost see it now that she saw it, you can see there's that shape that kind of reflects a head and a body, and because the Buddha is quite round there. And so she took, and you see it, right? So she evolved his work by coloring it gold, and then said, when you look at this at a certain way, you can see the Buddha inside. And so you see, she wouldn't have done her work if Duchamp hadn't done his work. And so it goes. Yourself. So we can use self-portraiture to unlock a vision of ourselves, decipher who we are, find out who we are, think and feel. And nearly all artists have created a self-portrait at one time or the other. Because we have limited time and we are focused on residential design, I am not going to ask you to do this, but I am going to encourage you to do this outside of class. Have your own projects outside of class. Your competitors, your competition in the industry, those of other students who are looking to get the jobs you want, they're doing this. And I know this because I used to be a design student. It's good to focus on residential design because that is what we're doing, but you shouldn't limit yourself. And that is because, as I keep telling you, the more you know yourself and the more you can hone your own style, the more it helps you in your career path. So do self-portraits. And if you want to make them architectural, by all means, use architectural elements. Photograph yourself with buildings in a creative way. But do them. It does help you to look at them and understand what inspires you, what your culture is, and helps you with your work. And so this just kind of talks a little bit more. Here's, Picasso did his own self-portrait at the end of his life. He did many throughout, but this was the one at the end of his life. And you see someone who is tired, someone who's kind of done with this life. Egon Schiele. Andy Warhol, a very controversial artist. Frank Gehry made his own portrait from his own sketches. And he, if you, as you look at anything he's done, or I'll show you some stuff he's done. You look at his sketches. I don't. Well, he may not have done this. Someone else may have done this, but his portrait represents his architectural sketching style. Okay, so I've referenced Sketchbook. You all should have one, and you should, if you haven't already gotten one, you should go get one. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. You can pick anything you want. I recommend you not pick a notebook, um, but I'm not gonna, say you shouldn't. Um, it's usually because the lines on a notebook sort of influence your sketching, and in the beginning, when you're trying to be as free as possible, you don't want that. Here's an image of plants in one of Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbooks, and he did drawings and he wrote notes. And these sketchbooks help you so much to remember and record the things you see, the feelings you have, your thoughts. It's really great to go, and I used to do this as an art student. I would go and sit and look at buildings, and I would sketch and I would write and I would sometimes do poetry. And don't beat yourself up if you do poetry. I would just do all kinds of things that helped me um, form ideas. And then I would, on the next page, I would start to abstract or pull from what I had done to start to pull out things that were meaningful to me, and then I could use those things in my future work. And I use that, right? I got my Associate of Fine Art degree first. And I used stuff I did in my notebooks and my sketchbooks later on as an architecture student to influence the designs I did. And so if you're doing that and you're keeping that up, that puts you ahead of others that aren't. But it also helps you problem solve, test new ideas, explore. Because someone I used to work for would always say, a bad idea well developed is still a bad idea. And so sketchbooks help you very quickly work through problems and come up with good ideas. And you're investing in yourself, and you're investing your time wisely before you start to develop those ideas. The whole reason this class is purely by hand and you're not allowed to do any drawing on the computer is for that very reason, is to get you in the habit of sketching, drawing, working away from the computer before you invest time into any idea. And you should do that. And that's why we started it off this way. Abstraction and non-objective design. Abstraction means an image that no longer fully resembles the original model. We've talked about this a bit. And non-objective means that it makes no reference to the natural world. So while you can be influenced by the natural world, you can also be influenced by the antithesis of that. Okay, so for instance, here is a sketch of a cow. And in the step 2, the cow is broken down into geometric shapes. Step 3 adds color. And then in step 4, the parts are reordered and recolored to create abstract and non-objective design. And if you think that starts to look a little bit like a potential floor plan, you're not wrong. And so I shared this specifically because there are ways to do exactly this when you're thinking about cultural influences on your layouts, on your planning. And so how do you take a realistic subject and turn it into an abstract? You apply the principles and elements of design. And so there's a video here that shows artist Gwen Fox talking about her process of abstraction. And it's really worth a look because she does a good job of explaining it. Because once again, I picked an artist who, while she is a painter, her work is very architectural and can help you in abstract design. Here's a direct architectural example. This is fish scales. And you will see that that is sort of become a popular thing to do on buildings, is to apply fish scales. It starts to work with texture, but also in this case, louvers have a functional role in blocking or allowing in light and heat. And so they're not just pretty, but they are also quite functional. We often look to nature to find influence. Paul Gauguin said, art is either revolution or plagiarism. And I encourage you all to be revolution. Okay, I'm going to stop here and we will continue in the next video.